This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer, come in, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den.
And welcome into episode number 134 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Noah Grant, literally joined by Nick Maxton here, Pepsi Rink at Mesa Arena here in Minot, North Dakota. Nick, pleasure to have you as always. We've got a really great show coming up for our listeners today. Of course, recapping another wild week in the NCAA.
Very wild.
Oh, it's been
Holy
crazy.
buckets.
NCHC action has been wild as well. Non-conference women's hockey even gave us some interesting plays. St. Cloud, the women's team almost did it again.
Nice.
So pretty impressive. It's been a tough wake-up call for a lot of teams in the NCAA, none of which involve us in our tough wake-up call this morning too. So hopefully we can push through this as best as we can. But, speaking of wake-up calls, the Reverse Retros 2.0 came out this week as well. So we're going to recap this. As well as we're going to talk about the board advertisements. Are they working? A lot of people say no, and we tend to agree ever so slightly, I would say. So
There's points to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
the technology, it's kind of like the Huskies Warming House podcast. The technology is kind of there, but not really.
More user error than anything.
We are here. Also, if you happen to hear any noise in the background, we are at a hockey rink. So
8:00 in the morning was the first game.
Yeah.
So as we walked in, 8:30.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? You're up. Gosh, that brings me back a little bit. 6:30 wake up time. You're probably at the rink by 7.
Yeah.
Yikes.
You know what the sad part is? I can't imagine that. We had a game we were playing in Greeley, I think, in Colorado. And I think we were playing the University of Colorado, UC or whoever it is, CU, whoever it is. And our game was like 8:45 in the morning. It was just like, and you're like in college and you're like, are you serious? Like we're playing, but it made sense because we played early in the morning and then drove the entire way back. It's like a 14-hour drive back.
Gross.
So it kind of makes sense why they did it. But nonetheless, we also have a very short and abbreviated Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup, by especially with a guy by the name of Phil Kessel. We're not going to talk about hot dogs, but they certainly have been working, so to speak. So let's get into it. Why don't we? We'll start, as always, with Center Ice View News and Notes.
Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
So as you mentioned here, Noah, Center Ice View News and Notes, the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup. We're going to talk about Phil Kessel. We're going to talk about how apparently the secret to a long NHL career is the Oscar Mayer hot dogs. Apparently that's the secret. Is it relish? Is it ketchup, mustard? I don't know. He's got plenty of mustard left in the tank, though, I'll tell you that much. He could be the person that can break the Iron Man streak. And how interesting is this? In the last 2 seasons, we've seen the Iron Man streak broken once, and possibly a second time in 2 consecutive seasons.
Yeah, I mean,
so weird.
History in the making, right? I mean, 35 years old, potentially 400 goal scorer, 1,000-point scorer, top 100 all time in both statistical categories. I mean, he's got another month to get to 1,000 appearances, so he has a chance to be the first NHLer, obviously, to break that barrier. Would you have ever thought it would have been Phil the Thrill?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have.
No.
It's funny because he gets the flack that starts in Toronto. And he just quietly goes about his business. He wins back-to-back Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh. And to think that, can you imagine he was a Boston Bruins pick back in the day?
Yeah, it's actually crazy. Here's the question. So he's supposed to break it Tuesday in San Jose. I believe they play today and Tuesday. I think he's got 2 games to get there.
Yep.
He'll tie it tonight or yesterday, whatever it was. And then Tuesday is when he breaks it. The thing is, if you're Phil Kessel, are you cognizant of the fact that you just want to get to Tuesday and at least play a shift, and then you stop worrying about it?
Probably.
Like you're finally got to this point. Could you imagine if he gets hurt? You know what I mean? Like,
I think you get to a point where it's nice to have that Ironman streak, but really what does that give you? It's a kind of a pride thing.
Hot dogs.
It's maybe more hot dogs. Reality, I think if you were to ask Phil Kessel what he really would like, he would have got 2 of those. He got back-to-back cups with Pittsburgh. The Ironman streak's another just little, wrinkle in the feather per se, but I think, you get past it. Lucky he's not on the Philadelphia Flyers bench. We'll just put it to you that way.
Yeah.
So you'll be fine.
Yeah, certainly not. A couple of other, it looks like old bodies kind of doing some damage.
Eric Stahl, 1-year deal with the Panthers, a league minimum at 37 years old. I always thought that Eric Stahl had something left in the tank. Now, it was clear as the Minnesota Wild did not re-sign him. They were in the midst of a transition. They wanted to get younger. They wanted to get faster. So I get it, as painful as it was. I also think Eric Stahl is one of the best puck protectors in the National Hockey League, especially during his prime. He was just unbelievable to watch. Just really incredible hockey IQ, and try getting the puck off a stick below the goal line in the offensive zone. It was almost impossible.
Yeah, certainly weird. He hasn't played in the show in over a year, so kind of interesting to see that happen. So I don't know how effective he'll be. Weird that the signing is coming. He's supposed to be in the lineup today as his opening game, but weird that it took this long. Didn't have a point in 4.
He had a couple PTOs last year, didn't he?
Well, he had one this year, but he didn't have a point.
That's right.
So weird.
Weird, very weird. Speaking of bodies and contracts, again, they still continue to roll through even as the NHL season does get underway. Flames goaltender Dan Villar. It's Vladar. The V is silent.
Is it really?
Vladar.
I thought it was Vladar, whoever you want.
Just like Stahojevic or
Stahojevic.
I still
Easy
do
for you
it.
to say.
Easy for me to say.
Yeah.
For those didn't calling, there was a guy that I call Stahowiak. Now the name is spelt
STACH. OWIAK. Yeah.
So whenever I see the CH, my brain instantly freezes, and I'm not sure why. It actually, I don't think I butchered his name once yesterday.
Yeah, it takes a bit to kind of dial that one in. Did have the game winner on Friday night, so if you go to the Null page on Twitter, you can definitely hear that goal call. By the way,
Vladar, he does get an extension, 2 years, $4.4 million in total, so 2.2 per season. He's still a young goaltender, 5 years of age, just over a .906 save percentage, 2.75 goals against average in 23 games last year. Definitely the backup, behind Jacob Markstrom. And dare I say for the Flames, that Jacob Markstrom has looked a little shaky early in the last couple of starts. So Vladar, he's been serviceable again with those numbers. So hopefully Markstrom can pull it together. But if he does struggle or does need some time away, it looks like Vladar is the guy that they can rely on to put in some quality minutes.
Yeah, speaking of taking time away, the Red Wings, Jakub Vrana, placed in the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. The league announced on Wednesday. He'll continue to be paid during his absence and can return to the Red Wings once cleared by program administrators. Of course, played 2 games this season and then missed the last contest. The 2018 Stanley Cup champion, originally with Washington Capitals. I believe he was like 13th or 14th overall in his draft year. 32 points in 39 games since coming to Detroit. He's only 26. I think it feels like he's a lot older, but
he's been in the league for a while. I think, didn't he break in when he was like 19 or 20?
Yeah,
he's been in the show for a while. And first of all, good for him to actually go out and actually utilize the resources that are there. It's tough to see that he is having some struggles, but glad to know that he's taking advantage of some opportunities to try to right the ship. And so we're always supportive of that, and hopefully he does find the support that he needs.
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of players that were young when they entered the league, a couple of injuries here. Gabriel Landeskog for Colorado out 12 to 14 weeks after knee surgery. Oof, that one hurts.
They've been doing fine, however.
Juraj Slavkovsky for the Montreal Canadiens scored his first goal the other night. He's day-to-day with an upper body injury from Montreal.
Scored his first goal and made the defenseman know about it, too. I don't know if you saw that video. He was yelling straight into the defenseman's face there. He was giving him the business.
Yeah, it certainly was. Aaron Ekblad, a long-term injured reserve for Florida. This one bites with the loss of Mackenzie Weegar. Unfortunately, Toronto having woes as well with injuries. A week at least will be missed by Jake Muzzin on the back end there. And then Detroit, Tyler Bertuzzi out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. And welcome into episode number 134. Nick Maxon literally here with me alongside Noah Grant here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. We are here.
You really introduced yourself in third person. That was fantastic.
Well, yeah, I always do. I mean, it doesn't change when we're in first person.
Does it, though?
For those wondering, again, if you missed it in the opening of the show, we are at an actual hockey rink together. We called some hockey together, some NAHL games here with the Minot Minotaurs. They earned a split on the weekend against Aberdeen. It was a lot of fun. Very exhausting weekend, though.
Yes, very exhausting.
In fact, actually, when you're done with this, we are headed right to the airport.
We are. Yeah.
So we're on a time crunch. So we need to hurry up. No, I'm just kidding.
And then hopefully right to the bar for me.
Well, no one says you can't. I mean, as long as you keep it together on the plane. I mean, although 11 o'clock might be a little early to get it going. I got to be honest with you.
No, I'm behind.
Huskies Warming House podcast. We do not condone drinking. Anyway, speaking of things that might cause you to drink, Nick is going to be at the Vikings game next week. So have fun with that. But we should have either a late Sunday night recording and Monday morning release, or at worst, a Monday night recording and a Tuesday morning release, depending on how traffic and everything works and if Nick is still upright. And then
or if the Vikings keep me upright again. They play the Arizona Cardinals, who seem to have found some rejuvenation last week. They put up 42 points against the Saints defense, so I'm a little scared because the Vikings defense has been suspect.
Oh, come on. When have Minnesota sports ever let you down?
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we're actually going to skip everything, and we're going to have a 4-hour synopsis of Minnesota sports.
Won't even take that long. You just need one sentence. Pain.
Well, speaking of pain, St. Thomas, a Minnesota team, very akin to that. Let's jump into the NCAA non-NCHC schedule. I cannot wait to
be done with that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of be done with it, but people will get it. Just watch the show every week, then you'll understand. Penn State blowing out St. Thomas in night number 1, 6-2, but then a 3-2 overtime victory for the Nittany Lions with 20 seconds left in that game.
St. Thomas had a claw back from 2-0 too in that game to tie it. So just heartbreaking way to end that game.
They've got Ferris State next weekend. We'll talk about that. But this St. Thomas team, unfortunately, just can't buy a break. Rico Blasi is building something special there, but certainly the building blocks are taking a little bit time to be laid. He needs the aliens from the pyramids in Egypt to give him a little bit of boost or something.
Well, and I think let's reset the expectation here, right? They are not even, a year and a half into their Division I life per se. So, I mean, they are better. Again, it's not necessarily early right now that you're getting the wins and losses to where you would like them to go. But as we talked about weeks prior, they're being harder to play against. They're still, 17 new bodies. I mean, imagine that as a team trying to be cohesive and gel, especially on defensive pairings as well as up front on line combinations. And it's been poor starts. Again, on Friday's 6-2, they got blown out 5-0 in the first period. It was, dare I say, it was the pain didn't end. And so putting yourself into a situation where you're trying to climb uphill for a team that has historically had trouble scoring goals doesn't help. But again, every time you play a better opponent, you're going to learn something, you're going to get better. So I still feel like they're going to still make trends. We're going to see more of a turnaround here the next probably month or two.
Yeah, speaking of turnarounds, these two programs, especially UConn, has not been a powerhouse program. BU, of course, in the mid 2000s to 2010 certainly was. Very wild weekend, a split on the weekend for the teams. UConn 4, BU 3 in night number 1. That one was an overtime. And then BU winning 5-2 against UConn the second night. So again, both these teams have had success against Michigan, against Ohio State. I tell you what, this further tells me, and Northeastern had a crazy run this weekend. They tied 3-3 in overtime with Boston College, and then lost by 1 goal to UMass Lowell 3-2, who's given teams some runs for their money.
They're getting fits.
Hockey East is. I know we don't really talk about the East a lot for various reasons, regardless of the fact that none of them are the state of hockey. But the fact of the matter is, this NCAA landscape is kind of wild out of the gate. And I know we've had a few upsets here and there as we've gone through, years past, but it just feels like there's a little bit of parity. There's a little bit of, you don't know what you're going to get on any given night. And I think that's super exciting.
It is. And the non-conference matchups are always kind of fun, right? Where you're kind of setting, the early mark on where your team is at. You're playing some good opponents. You're playing some opponents that you should beat, right? And dare we say that the numbers tell us a different story, right? So it's exciting. I think the last couple of seasons we've seen essentially like a grouping that we thought for sure was going to be in the top 20, and then everybody else was sort of behind. I think this year you're going to see a lot more teams be in sort of that bottom tier that's fighting for a last playoff position. I really do feel like it's going to be a lot more tightly contested. I feel like you're going to see some new teams in, maybe some old teams out. So it's going to be a fun year for college hockey fans, nail-biting ones for sure on top of that.
Yeah, speaking of nail biters, Lindenwood looking to bounce back. Unfortunately, losing to AIC by a score of 5-0. Keeps getting more interesting. Game 2 is today on Sunday, so we don't have a score for you. Also, another one to keep an eye on, Holy Cross 7, AIC 3. I think that one was earlier in the week.
It was, yes.
So just keeping an eye on that. Holy Cross has given teams some fits here, and AIC has given teams fits. Huskies fans know that very well. So
fits and, bedtime nightmares. So
yeah, no kidding. Although, I mean, I get that when you're here sometimes too. So, I mean, who's to say, right? I mean,
that makes sense. So,
well, what's on tap for teams in the non-NCHC schedule here? Paying attention next week, we have some conference games here
starting to get up. Yep, finally.
Yeah, should be good. 3 in the Big Ten. The Minnesota Golden Gophers do have Ohio State. Keep an eye on that one. Penn State will travel to Wisconsin, who had an interesting weekend. We'll get to that. And then Michigan State will travel to Notre Dame. In the CCHA 2.0, Bowling Green will visit Mankato, and St. Thomas, like we mentioned, will visit Ferris State. So kind of curious to see how Rico Blase's squad fares there. I believe St. Thomas could probably get a win there.
Wasn't that their first ever win against Ferris State? I'm pretty confident it was.
Yeah, I would not be shocked. Dude, I don't even know what I had for breakfast this morning. We got up like an hour ago. So
because you didn't have breakfast. I mean, I'm older and I remember that. Come on.
Yeah, I did not have breakfast. So, but hey, yeah, you're over here looking like a snack. What can I say? Hockey East.
I'm so uncomfortable right now.
Hey, you're the one who got on a plane and came over here to America's Wasteland. Don't look at me. Hockey East Thursday game. Connecticut actually has BC again, I believe. So, yeah, very interesting schedule that we've got going on here. UMass Lowell against Boston University. So, of course, UMass Lowell facing Northeastern this weekend, and Northeastern have both UMass and BC. So pay attention to that one and see how those.
Sounds like they're doing like kind of just a rotation over there with those couple of teams. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
and then RIT, who has had an interesting start to their season. They get Holy Cross and some Atlantic hockey action, so pay attention to that one. NCHC here. Let's round up the NCHC teams. Miami continuing to roll. Good for them. 5-3 and 2-0 victories against Canisius. I don't know how strong Canisius is, but they got the job done. That's the most important thing. And I think they're, what are they like? I think they're 3-0
3-1.
Yeah,
think.
or 5-0-1. One of the two.
You know what? And even if you make the case, hey, this is non-conference, their opponents maybe weren't the best. Again, you're setting yourself up to have a little bit of confidence to get your game rolling to the NCHC. And as you said before, NCHC, anything can happen. And it certainly looks like early that a couple of our picks from our season preview are, dare I say, not going the way we thought.
Struggling, yeah.
Which is how these things go.
However, and I will temper the enjoyment of Huskies fans. Don't forget the Huskies last year had a really great start with their non-conference schedule too, and then of course kind of petered off in the second half of the season. So
during conference play,
yeah. So which is kind of important. Colorado College traveled down to Arizona State University, 5-3 loss in night number 1, 6-1 in night number 2 down at Mullet Arena. The CC team, it's hard to get a gauge on them right now, and I kind of wonder if they're just struggling on the road. Or if ASU also is just really that good. They're supposed to have a pretty good club this year.
ASU is good.
Yeah.
ASU does have some weapons up front, a couple of NHL draft picks as well. And Colorado College too. We think they're going to take some steps, but again, that takes time. They had some better showings earlier in their non-conference schedule. This maybe just wasn't their weekend. Obviously, we haven't seen the film, haven't seen the way that things played out, but it certainly seems like offense was struggling, and so was defense.
How about this? Denver University, 4-1 victory and 3-2 in overtime against Providence. This Denver team, and defending national champions, they've gotten the job done against most of their opponents, but they haven't made it look easy.
And you know what? I kind of hate that sentiment, and I'll tell you why, Noah, is that when we get to playoff time, isn't that the types of games that you have to win? Is those tight contested contests?
Yeah.
Honestly, tight contested contests. That makes no goddamn sense. Anyway.
Yeah, it does.
So, yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it does.
I just using.
Yeah, it's a tightly contested contest.
Shut up. So, but it's the tight games. It's those close games that are, the ones that you have to be mentally strong and to stick with the game plan. That tells you the story of a tested playoff performer, right? So, the expectation that a defending national champion has to go blow the doors off your opponents, That's not how this works. I mean, ask the Colorado Avalanche. They blowing out their opponents because they're the reigning Stanley Cup champion? No. So they're getting the job done. They're doing what has to be done. Again, it's how you play the game, and you're getting the win, not necessarily the ending score.
Yeah, they have had a couple of rocky games, though, and I believe a loss or two that just has really struggled for them. Another team that's really struggled, Omaha, against Al Fairbanks, our best friend. That's Alaska Fairbanks, for those who are curious. Yes. Alaska Fairbanks, 3-2 victory in overtime yesterday. Game 2 is also today. I believe that one is in Alaska, so that's probably why the different start time. But, yeah, this Omaha club, man,
yikes. Just can't seem to find footing, and that's tough. We had them towards the bottom of the NCHC, but the non-conference has been indicative that they may be switching with another team.
Yeah, they could you imagine? When's the last time we've seen Miami out of the cellar in the NCHC?
2016.
Yeah.
2017.
Colorado College has had an interesting ride too. I'm still really high on them. I still think they're going to rebound. They've been really good at home, but again, interesting for them. A split, Western Michigan, Notre Dame, 2-0 victory for Notre Dame on Friday. Western Michigan 4-0 on Saturday. Not often you see back-to-back shutouts that go the opposite way. So, this Western Michigan team kind of interesting to get a gauge on them. I think they're going to be a team that's going to give teams fits. I mean, they're probably good for at least a split every weekend, I think.
I would think.
In the matchup that they go into. North Dakota, Minnesota, 3M Arena at Mariucci. Gophers winning in overtime 3-2. UND winning the next night in the same fashion. 5-4 was the final score. I believe it was like 4-2 or 4-1 North Dakota at one point, and Gophers clawed their way back in that one. Powerhouse, heavyweight, slugging. Good to see that building packed.
It's about time.
Yeah, even if there was a lot of North Dakota fans, #gag. Actually, ironically enough, for those, I don't even know if we mentioned it, the games actually going on behind us are the 16U and 18U Team North Dakota and Team Minnesota games. Of course, that's where I wore my CCM National Invitational from way back in 2015. It still fits, but just barely. So that's kind of a scary thought. But you know what still fits? North Dakota, Minnesota. What a great rivalry.
And again, the fact that these two haven't been consistently playing in the non-conference aspect has been an absolute travesty to college hockey fans. It really has. And this is why. Right, two tightly contested games down at 3M at Mariucci. Again, Minnesota pulling off the overtime victory. A controversial call, but upon review, definitely wasn't a kick there by Mark Senden, the captain. Again, the YZ native getting the overtime winner there for the Fighting Hawks in game number 2. So a split. But I mean, and the building was electric.
Yeah,
and that's from what I get, that's the Mariucci arena that I remember growing up in. Again, because you remember back in the Stone Tablet era that I grew up in, right? The North Stars left, and then there was this void where the ticket in town was the Gophers. And so going into that rink, to me as a kid, it was always packed. There wasn't an empty seat. It was ruckus. I learned some crowd chants that probably shouldn't have learned. But at the end of it, it was fun, and this needs to continue to happen every single year, whether it's they just go back and forth between the arena up there in Grand Forks and now there in Minneapolis. I don't care, but make sure that these two continue to schedule these games every single season.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, the old WCHA rivalries continue. Duluth against Wisconsin. Wisconsin 5-2 and 3-0 sweep of the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs.
We talked about this in NCAA with our friend Max Veach, and
he's our friend.
I know, right?
I'm just kidding. Love you, Max.
I cautioned him because I'm like, this could be the perfect storm for Duluth.
Yeah.
You have a Wisconsin team that came in this winless and also not winning their exhibition contest. So the panic button was in full send mode there for the Badger squad. So they were going on the road. UMD not having the best showing down there at Mankato. Again, what was it, 5 or 6 shots on goal on Friday's contest? And that first loss, that team seems to be out of sync. And then going back and looking at the box score in this, a lot of self-inflicted wounds here for UMD, especially on the penalty side. Again, Isaac Howard, he got a game misconduct in the Saturday game. You get one of your best defensemen, Wyatt Kaiser, that was not only given a game misconduct, but also a suspension. So he was out for not only the rest of Friday's game, but also the entirety of Saturday's game. So UMD is reeling. This is uncharacteristic of UMD this early in the season.
Max Veach always, posting things on Twitter about what it's like to be a Duluth fan at this time. I don't even feel bad for him. I mean, you got 3 national championships, and we're the defending back-to-back natty champs for like over 1,000 days or something like that. Yeah, so it's like 1,700 days or something that they were undefeated until they finally were bounced by UMass, I believe. So, which Huskies fans know that team very well too. But
Yes.
that's the thing, is this Duluth team, and I'm trying to get engaged. I think Wisconsin, I think if they can find their footing, they're actually going to be okay.
They needed this weekend.
Yeah, and they need a little traction. Really, when it comes to the conference play, of course, in the Big Ten. But this Duluth team, I mean, if you're a Huskies fan right now, you need to be licking your chops a little bit here potentially. I mean, this Duluth team, if you can get them on the ropes here, I mean, if they're having some flaws that go deeper beyond, they struggled on the power play this weekend, or their defense was a little lackluster, their goaltending was a little questionable, this could spell disaster. If Duluth continues to play, and granted, they played a very good Mavs team very tightly last Saturday. Friday was definitely nothing to write home about for sure. Don't put that one on the postcard. But if they continue to trend the way that they have been, geez, Nick, they might not even make a home ice spot in the NCHC. Now it's very early, way too early for us to tell.
Very early.
Yeah.
And again, we caution this, right, is that even when Scott Sandlin teams start slow, they always seem to pick it up at the right time. Now, question is that even when they did start slow in seasons past, they were still, I don't know if competitive is the word, but games were much closer. You could see that maybe just a bounce or two didn't go their way. They were still creating chances. Again, they had solid defense, solid goaltending. It just seems like a couple of areas there for UMD just simply aren't there at all, and that's concerning.
Yeah, it's definitely not the prototypical Scott Sandlin piece. We talked about how he's able to take a misfit puzzle and somehow mash it together every season. I don't know. This puzzle might be expert level and a half here.
1,000 pieces versus 500.
Yeah.
Might take a little longer.
Yeah, it's super interesting. St. Cloud State, I predicted this on NCAA and the other show that we do. I mean, to a T, which will probably never happen again. So that's why I'm mentioning it while we can.
And that's why they give me the wrong answer buzzer in the back. That was that was comedically timed. That was brilliant.
Well, I mean, for other all comedic needs, that's why you're here, right? So
that's true.
Yeah,
I provide nothing else. So.
Yeah. St. Cloud State, I did predict that they would sweep the Mavs with 1-goal games both nights. Well, the Huskies swept the Mavs with 1-goal games both nights, 3-2 on Friday. A nail biter game winner from Grant Cruikshank, 4-3 on Saturday, with a couple minutes remaining in that one. Let's start with Friday's contest to recap this here. Zach Okabe got the scoring started. Spencer Meyer and Vieti Mietinen goal scorers for the first goal for St. Cloud. Grant Cruikshank from Zach Okabe and Kyler Kupka. And then Kyler Kupka, the game winner, a good greasy little rebound that he was able to pick up from Grant Cruikshank again. And Dylan Anhorn, another point for him this weekend on the power play. Huskies go 1 for 3 on the power play, 2 for 3 on the penalty kill. Did allow, of course, a goal against there. Face-offs, unfortunately, 23 for 65. A real struggle in the dot this weekend. Jackson Castor, 30 saves on 32 shots on that Friday night. Fantastic victory.
Castor looks good.
Yeah, certainly has. I mean, I think he's taken a lot of flack in years past, and it's nice to see him, kind of get over that hump a little bit. Saturday night, Grant Cruikshank started our scoring from Micah Miller shorthanded. Get used to hearing that, hopefully. The Micah Miller train is definitely rolling in full force. Micah Miller also scoring in this game. Kyler Kupka, quietly a very good weekend for him this weekend as well, too. We talked about the importance of that top six being successful.
How quickly has that Cruikshank, Micah Miller, and Kupka line gelled? Holy cow. Are they producing?
One word, speed. Certainly. Third goal for the hockey game for the Huskies, Chase Brand from Andre Treball and Joey Molinar. Good to see a couple of maybe guys that, that's what we talked about with St. Cloud. The top six is scoring. The guys that need to score are doing their jobs, but then you get a little pick-me-up from those guys that maybe you don't expect to get on the score sheet a ton. Big spot, big moment, 3-3 hockey game. Grant Cruikshank with just over 3.5 minutes to play from Kyler Kupka. Fourth goal of the game, St. Cloud takes the sweep on home ice. 0-3 on the power play on night number 2. Perfect on the kill on 4 opportunities. Face-off still 28 for 65 in the dot. They got to work on that for sure. Dominic Bassi, 34 saves on 37 shots. Nick, what a weekend.
Yeah, very good weekend for St. Cloud. And, again, tight games, as they usually are with the Mavs. I believe both games last year down in Mankato were 1-goal games as well.
I'm trying to think. I want to say, I think the first one was
2-1 Saturday.
I think the first game was like 3-1 or something like that.
And I think
maybe
it was an empty netter. But either way, they're close.
Yeah.
These two, they grinded out every single time. And granted, Saturday, St. Cloud was up 3-1 at one point, and it was some people waking up. Sam Morton being one of them. one of the veteran players there for the Mavericks, trying to claw their way back in. They're able to tie it late, but then Grant Cruikshank again, getting the Huskies over the hump. And, we've talked about Cruikshank before, and I want to ask you this. You asked me last week if these two would be sort of the better, shall we say, transfer portal pickups. I think Grant Cruikshank early is making the case for, if not the best, transfer portal pickup that St. Cloud's had in some time.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Dylan Anhorn too on the back end. I mean, he had great point production weekends in the first 4 games of the season. But with that being said, Grant Cruikshank has been a consistent force on offense. So it's hard to gauge, just because of the fact that Grant, is expected to maybe produce a little bit more on that forward side of things. But gee, if they're both doing what they've been doing right now, certainly no complaints from Brett Larson and his coaching staff. What a great pickup. And I would love to hear his thoughts. Hopefully we'll have him on maybe around like Christmas time or something like that. Would love to hear his thoughts on how that kind of transpired. I know Grant Cruikshank had looked at St. Cloud before he went to Minnesota. Yep. Dylan Anhorn, a much different story. But, St. Cloud is getting these elements at the right time. Their bottom 6 forwards are not giving up these drastic goals against.
No.
Top 6 is doing their job. Guys that struggled last year, think of your Vieti Mietinens, are starting to get a little bounce back. Your Kyler Kupkas, Zach Okabis, Yami Kranilas have taken the next step, although Yami Kranila has been a little bit quiet this weekend, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Everybody else is kind of picking him up there. Defensive core, they've got a lot of rotation, even with Josh Lidke out of the lineup, and they're getting a tandem goaltending duo that really, you go back to maybe the early first year for Brett Larson, maybe you have a little bit of that with David Rennick, and I believe, was it Joe Smith? I'm trying to think who was the... Why don't I not remember? Why don't I remember who that? Oh my gosh! Anyway, Joe Smith. That sounds like an NHL name, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah,
the most generic one in the world.
Yeah, I don't know why that name popped in my head, but anyway, with that being said, it's been a while since we've seen a 1-2 goaltending tandem for St. Cloud, and to see them finally get that, to see Brett Larson and his coaching staff trust that and learn from that experience against Quinnipiac last year, and giving Jackson Castor the possibility too, and having a very good third option in James Gray as well too. They have all the elements that are clicking in motion here. In fact, I do wonder when it comes to teams in the upper echelon in the NCAA. The Huskies are 6-0. I bet you there's not many teams around the country in general, but especially in the Big Ten, the NCHC, that can really come close to that right now, and it's a good sign.
No, it is. And, the Huskies had a good non-conference record last year. In fact, that's what kind of helped buoy them to a top 10 ranking in the NCAAs. But this year feels different, and it feels different because the record's similar. What was it? I think they went 6-2, I believe, in non-conference.
Yep.
But
probably should have been 7-1 if somebody's jersey didn't get tugged. Speaking of which, by the way, remiss to mention, if you haven't seen it, Nick Perbix, the guy whose jersey got tugged, absolutely blew up Matthew Tkachuk and ended up on a T-shirt the other day.
Yes, he did.
So, pretty cool.
Getting his NHL call up earlier than I think he anticipated there down in Tampa, where they're dealing with some injuries and some different things going on there. But but back to the Huskies, their non-conference schedule. I think for them this year feels different because it feels like they're balanced and they're well positioned on every single area of their game.
Yeah,
offense, defense, goaltending. It feels like that. Last year it feels like the top 6 needed to produce, but the bottom 6 just wouldn't get the pick-me-ups. We're seeing that this season.
Yeah.
Defense, you're carrying, 8, 9 defensemen? And even with Lidke out, they've been able to insert guys in the lineup, and they're able to contribute and play at a high level, right? And again, with Jackson Castor, who, for the fans who are still stuck on that playoff loss last year, get over it, number one. That's such a tough spot for a goaltender to be in.
Yeah.
Showing that when he does get consistent playing time, right? This is the goaltender that we always know he could be. And now that he's been firmly in the rotation on one with Dominic Bassi, we're showing what he can do again, picking up a win on Friday night here to lead the Huskies to, again, another weekend sweep. So
Joe Smith is an NHL name. It was Jeff Smith. That's what I was thinking of. I think about that. 2018-19 feels like eons ago. So apologies, Joe, Jeff, whoever you are. Jim, James, too many J's. Name your kids something unique. Sorry. Anyway, with that being said, speaking of uniqueness, our first NCHC action is already next weekend. First matchup, Miami will travel to Denver for the first conference play of the season.
It'll be tough for Miami, but
you know what? Like I said, this Denver team has been kind of up and down. Miami's been trending in the right direction. Dare I say Miami could steal a point or two from this Denver team this year?
We'll see.
would certainly be nice. It's a hard building to win in Magnus Arena.
Super hard.
That's for sure. Western Michigan will be at and then at home versus the Michigan Wolverines.
Now.
Yeah, to be determined. We'll see if it actually happens. Yes, game slated on the docket and should happen. So, of course, keep an eye on that one. Omaha will travel to Long Island to face LIU. Cornell will visit Duluth. Duluth, that is a much-needed weekend for them to get some confidence back.
Do. My goodness.
Colorado College will be at home and then traveling to Air Force Friday, Saturday. So keep an eye on that one. Air Force, we've tagged them a little bit in some of our scores. CC could at least use a split, if not better. They did beat Air Force earlier in the season, I believe.
You are right, yes.
So that doesn't happen often. So we'll definitely keep that recording for later. Arizona State will travel to North Dakota and play only on Saturday, a one-game set as far as I saw, unless I missed something. A lot of scores to kind of sift through. And then St. Cloud will be traveling to and then at home on Saturday against Bemidji State. So Sanford Center Friday, at home Herbrooks National Hockey Center Saturday. Bemidji State, really not a big sample size for us to really look at for them. Had a decent weekend against Michigan Tech. Obviously this weekend, I believe 5-2 victory that we had mentioned, then 2-2 tie, I think, from what I had mentioned earlier. Yeah, not really anything to expect here. I think if you're St. Cloud, really just simply trying to keep the train rolling and continue doing the little things that you've done right, not get really maybe you almost even relaxed a little bit knowing that some of these other teams have struggled in the non-conference games, and just realize that you're really more focused on the game that you're playing. And like I said, if you outshoot them by 25 and you lose by 1, well, kudos to BSU. Try not to let it happen again, but just keep the train rolling and do what has made you successful through the first 6 games here.
And Bemidji State, we know, again, with Saratori at the helm, the type of game style that they play. They're an opportunistic team on offense, so they love to lock things down defensively, especially between the blue lines, especially in their own offensive zone. And they run that 1-2-2 forecheck to that hard, heavy style. So I still think it's going to pose St. Cloud a different look, which is good. That's why I like seeing this non-conference. You're getting different teams with different styles of play. And it's forcing you as a player to go deep inside, your hockey IQ, and to remember that, when you're, against this forecheck, these are your options out of the zone. It really helps you keep things fresh. And so, Bemidji, again, St. Cloud's had the better of them on paper, but if you go back during the games, they're closer games than people realize. I still remember going up to Sanford Center a couple of years back for KVSC radio, and that was when the final years of Jack and Nick Paling, so before the pandemic.
2 ties.
A couple of ties, and St. Cloud had to battle back in both of those games. In fact, got a couple of shorties, I believe, in one of those games to try to pull out a tie in that contest. So Bemidji can give you fits. And again, we said this before, it's more that Bemidji, they get you to be frustrated, especially for a speed and skill team.
Yep.
And then you start to open up things, and then that's when Bemidji takes advantage, is when you start to show a little bit of chink in the armor.
Yeah, certainly. Bemidji likes to be a very strong defensive team, like you had mentioned, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Should be exciting, of course.
Yeah.
Saturday night, definitely make sure you pack the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. I will say that. Of course, seeing 3M Arena at Mariucci, the great traveling force by North Dakota fans, whether you want to admit it or not, dude, pack the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. That building should be sold out almost every night, especially when you're playing these local teams. Part of the reason the old WCHA rivalries, and of course, old Minnesota, Midwestern rivalries, when they're renewed, you got to pack the building and make sure that every night matters. So moving over to the women's side, speaking of Bemidji, they traveled to Wisconsin. Was not a fortuitous experience for them. 8-0 and 7-1 Thursday, Friday scores for the Badgers, who continue to click along second in the standings right now. Mankato traveling to St. Thomas. Mankato winning 3-1 and 2-0. Also a Thursday, Friday matchup. A lot of Thursday, Friday games this week. So I'm waiting for that to die down. What is this, Hockey East? And then Duluth traveling to Ohio State. Ohio State winning 3-2 in overtime on Friday night, and then 3-2 in regulation yesterday. So that one was definitely one to keep an eye on. This Duluth team has kind of been the team to maybe watch for as far as eking into that 4th place spot. So St. Cloud looking to have a little bit of success. They've had 3 really tough matchups against OSU, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. They had Minnesota at home and then on the road at Ritter yesterday. Minnesota winning 4-2 on that Friday night, 2-1 on that Saturday night. Nick, we got a chance to watch this game, especially on Saturday. Let's start with Friday, though. Clara Himlerova opening the scoring with Taylor Lind in that game, and then Olivia Savar from Yanina Newland and Dale Ross, the 2 goal scorers and assist makers on that Friday night. 0 for 4 on the power play, 2 for 3 on the PK. Not too bad on special teams. 15 for 51 in the faceoff dot, though. That's got to be cleaned up. Jojo Chobak, 32 saves on 36 shots on Friday night. Saturday, the game that we took in, it was a 1-1 game until the Gophers scored late with about 4 minutes remaining. That was tough.
Bounce off the back wall, too.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Ahmed Gentry, opening goal of the hockey game from Courtney Hall. That was the only time the Huskies will get on the board. 0 for 5 on the power play. Perfect on the PK. A perfect 7 for 7. 20 for 63 in the dot, though. Still needs a lot of help there. And Sonny Ahola, 43 saves on 45 shots. Nick, this team, when you look, especially when we watched on Saturday, positionally, they are much better at the way they play the game, even in their own zone, even if they're being outshot. The offense is certainly there against a team like Minnesota, who I believe is going to be a very good team to contend with this year. 3 straight matchups for this St. Cloud team. Yes, they're 0-6 right now with an overtime loss in there. Probably could have stole one against Wisconsin. But, Nick, signs trending in really good directions here. And we've said that before against really good teams. The important part is for them to carry it over against these teams that they should get wins or at least compete with. But saying that for the most part, you are relatively competing with Ohio State, probably the best team in the country right now. The Badgers, who obviously always have a good group, and then Minnesota, who's a tough team to beat. It's been mighty impressive to start, I think.
It has. And, the one thing that we took in yesterday's game against the Gophers, and I think this has to be said out loud, is they were trading back and forth offensive chances.
Yeah.
Dare I say, it wasn't that long ago where a game like Minnesota, you would watch the game and, dare I say, the camera sometimes didn't move for a couple of minutes. The Huskies were hemmed in. They got gas. All they wanted to do was ship the puck out. Now they actually were countering. They had some good offensive chances. There was a couple of times there late in the third too where they had some grade A opportunities as well. So they're creating chances. And then again, perfect in the PK on Saturday. They do give up 1 power play goal on Friday, but again, that has been much improved this season. Again, Brian Idalski, one of the big things that he's really good at is that defensive zone structure. In fact, 90% penalty kill when he's coaching the national team for China this last World Championship that he was at the helm for. So the structure is there. The team looks more cohesive up and down the ice. And again, they're not just, sitting back and just trying to protect their own end. They're countering. And so that's a step. And you kind of wonder, too, as we look at St. Thomas on the men's side, right, is, again, as you mentioned, how do you continue to build? Is that you can't just stay at this level, and now how do you build another level each week? And so they have an opportunity, as you mentioned, you're coming up against is it Bemidji, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. The transitional game has certainly looked very good for this team, and something that we really haven't said as of recent is that they're able to weather the storm a little bit, keep teams to the outside, and actually counterattack a little bit, or at least alleviate pressure if they're in trouble. So this team certainly has a different look to it, a different feel. And it's super exciting. I think that this is what we were looking for from this program. I mean, literally, Nick, I think if they have success against the maybe bottom echelon teams, the teams that are not the big 3, so to speak, and maybe throw Duluth in there the way that they've at least started, if you're able to win those games, this team could easily compete for a 5th spot in the WCHA. Like I said, they're 0-6 right now, so it's a little bit misleading. They're going to have to put some wins together at some point. There's no doubt about that.
No question.
But with that being said, take the experience that you have. Really, I'm super excited, but also a little bit nervous to see, can they finally carry it together for a full 120 minutes against some of these teams that they really should compete with very well on paper. So let's look at the standings here in the WCHA. Ohio State pulling up the front, 23 points for them, 8 wins on the season. Minnesota in second, 18 points, 6-0 on the year. Wisconsin also 6-0, 1 point behind because of that game against St. Cloud. So 17 points for them. Mankato in that top 4 spot right now with 7 points, 2-6 in the season. Had a couple of wins this past weekend that certainly bolstered them. Duluth, 2-2 2-2, excuse me, 4 points on the season. In the 5th place spot, St. Cloud, like I mentioned, 0-6. The only other team, actually the only team that has not won a game that actually has a point in the WCHA right now. And then St. Thomas and Bemidji 0-4 and 0-6 respectively. What's on tap for the WCHA? Mankato will visit Bemidji. Wisconsin will travel up to Duluth. Very curious to see how that one ends up. And then Minnesota traveling to Ohio State. That is must-watch hockey for sure. St. Cloud will be at St. Thomas on Friday, and then at home on that Saturday versus St. Thomas. So again, get to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center.
Might be on the call for Saturday's contest. We're waiting to see.
Yeah, so provided Nick can find a way onto his plane at an appropriate time here today. So St. Cloud, looking ahead to them for St. Thomas, gotta have it, man. You just gotta have them both.
And I think, again, there's no moral victories in hockey, but I think you can take a lot of positives from that weekend in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Home and home. Again, the Gophers are a tough opponent. They have the skill. They have the speed. And the fact you could see that they were frustrated at times. The Gophers were trying to get to those interior parts of the ice. St. Cloud defended the house very, very well. And we were watching them on Saturday. So, again, giant steps. Again, sometimes, and again, in hockey, Brett Larson, again, starts. You got to start from the back end and work your way forward. This Huskies group is defending much, much better. They're breaking out much better. Now, if you can get just some of those offensive plays to click, now we're starting to talk here for a fully balanced squad here that can both produce up front as well as keep the stuff off the of your own scoreboard and back.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a team that is absolutely rolling. It's not the Minnesota Wild, but that's what we're going to talk about. Geez, man. This group, I tell you what, man. Okay, looking at the standings right now, they are after the wild card spots, they are in 6th right now. They are 1-3-1 in the season after 5 games, a .300 winning percentage. Only Anaheim, Arizona, Vancouver, and San Jose sit below them. Anaheim essentially has the exact same record, 2 more goals allowed. Vancouver is 0-4-2, has yet to win a game this season.
Yikes.
San Jose in the rear of the Western Conference, 7 games, played 1-6-0 on the season. Both with 2 points respectively. Minnesota has 3 points. Minnesota's essentially 2 points out of a wild card spot, which is kind of wild to say. Nashville is holding that spot right now at 2-4-1 with 7 games. So there is a chance for the Wild to still climb out of this. Yeah. They do have Montreal coming up here. I believe it's I have it listed as Tuesday, but I feel like it's Monday. Maybe it is Tuesday. I think it is Tuesday. No, it is Tuesday. Ottawa Thursday, Detroit Saturday, and Chicago Sunday. A chance for them on this 5-game road swing here. Getting an overtime loss against Boston really took the Bruins way too long to score for a game that they should have definitely put away. This Wild team, man, there are some fundamental problems with this team right now. Jean Merrill was a great addition on Saturday, though. Certainly looked very good.
Fleury looked much better.
Yes, he did. And this is a conversation that we had in our personal group chat about how, there's no question in my mind now that Marc-Andre Fleury is the goalie of the future. Philip Gustafson, he's just not that NHL-capable goaltender. Honestly, I think both of those arguments don't carry as much weight for me. I don't know about you, but...
So... a couple of things, right? Because a lot of people have been, dare I say, going into,
Minnesota sports world.
Panic. And more so, reminiscing of Cam Talbot, right? Now, mind you, Cam Talbot did play pretty decently.
Yeah.
But again, if he was that good, then why did Bill Guerin go out and get Marc-Andre Fleury?
And then why did Dean Emerson start him in the playoffs? Which that's a whole separate discussion. Yeah.
I think that was mismanaged.
Yeah, agree.
In my personal opinion. But at the end of the day, when Cam Talbot in his mind earns a starting position, which I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. And then you sign a backup goaltender to a 2-year extension. You have a 1A, 1B tandem. We've said this before in hockey. It's really tough to have 2 number 1 minded goaltenders on your roster. And Cam Talbot made it perfectly clear that he was not going to be a backup goaltender.
Yeah.
So Bill Guerin makes the trade, gets Philip Gustafson. And the thing that people have to remember about Gustafson, he's a young goaltender. He hasn't had a ton of NHL experience. Mm-hmm. So some of the comments that we see on social media are, he's not an NHL caliber goaltender. And I'm like, BS, one. And number 2, and to say that it's a small sample size.
Yeah.
And if you're going to pin the one loss on him, again, the team itself defensively has been an absolute nuclear explosion. It's been terrible.
He had that one goal, that dump in, that was tough to handle for him. But again, two defenders get beat in that race to that puck that goes in the back of that too. So need a little pick me up from the defense as well too. Like you mentioned, he's played 24 or 25 NHL games. He's only 23 years old and was on a very poor Ottawa team the past couple of years. Of course, had success at the international level, World Juniors for Sweden a couple of years ago. Has certainly proven himself at every other ranking. That's the thing, is I think that, you look at Jesper Wallstedt, who's 19, about to be 20 years old. What's the difference between 20 and 23 for goaltending as far as the NHL concerned? Not much. And that's the thing, where it's a very small sample size. And to say also, Marc-Andre Fleury, he's the goalie, he's the guy, he's the starter. Well, at the same time, he's a very over-aggressive goaltender that gets caught swimming around too and plays a very retro style of play that sometimes doesn't mesh with today's game. Philip Gustafsson is a very more controlled, very more technical goaltender. There's strengths and negatives to both goaltenders, but and I'm not denying that Marc-Andre Fleury might not still become the guy at some point here. No. But I think it's too early to tell that, and I think it's too early to write off Philip Gustafsson. And this Minnesota Wild team has a lot of other things that really have to be sorted out. And on top of that, for us to really get a strong answer, this is not the Minnesota Wild of yesteryear, where the defensive play was really strong and Devin Dubnyk let in a greaser in a 3-3 hockey game from the goal line with 3 minutes left in the game, right? So
and just for Wild fans to remember this, let's go back to Kakkonen. He was the reigning AHL goalie of the year when he was called up and got his big boy contract, right? So there was a lot of hype surrounding him. Yeah. Look what happened. You talk about, he was on a 10-game winning streak, and then just speaking of goaltending, technique, whatnot, it fell apart. And it fell apart enough to where they traded him. And he's been okay in San Jose. But you never know until you give him time. And again, you look at the Minnesota Wild schedule, they have that back-to-back Saturday, Sunday in Detroit and Chicago. He's going to have to go one of those nights. And so, for Minnesota, again, you talk about the defensive woes, more so about the five guys that are playing in front of the goaltender. We're going to get a real good look here. I think they were better in Boston. They still are chasing the puck a lot, which is not good. And at the end of the day, if you can give your goaltender a fighting chance and not force him to overplay pucks, aka Marc-Andre Fleury, you'll be better off. And so I think you're going to see a much better, more composed Philip Gustafsson in one of those games, whichever one he starts. And I think you're going to see more clearly, for those who watch the game, that the goaltending, yes, Fleury had some struggles early. I think he's been better now that he's got some more playing time. But you see, goaltending was not the number one problem. It was more the domino effect of the much larger problem in front of him. Yeah, certainly highlights, though, for this team. I mean, Matt Boldy has looked exceptional here. I mean, Matt Zuccarello and Kirill Kaprizov have still looked good. The plus-minus is not great. Also, I know we were kind of joking, Alex Micheletti. I told him, privately, he's talking about how everybody is minus. I'm like, everybody's minus on this team, Alex. That's not really a stat that you can, use. But really, to wrap up the main portion of the show, Nick, what do the Minnesota Wild have to do this week to kind of right the ship a little bit? Again, it's we can say it ad nauseum. They really just have to be in tune with the defensive structure. That's really what it comes down to, and that includes the forward group in the ice, right? A lot of the defensive game gets placed on. I know Matt Dumba's name gets thrown around. He had a couple of tough nights. There's no question about it. I've been a staunch defender of Matt Dumba. He has been shaky early on. He has been shaky. There's no question about it. But if they can reel that in, if they can help support, and especially in breakouts, do you feel like even in the Boston game, I saw some forwards that I feel like were getting a little bit too far ahead of the play and not giving the defenseman options. So they can just sort of collapse back. And that's where you mentioned Matt Dumba, by the way. And I know obviously we talk about the trade bait. Here's the thing about Matt Dumba. And, of course, they have him sheltered a little bit with Jonas Brodin, which they should, a very defensive defenseman. But the thing is, if he's making $2.8 million a year, I don't think Wild fans complain as much. I think he's still let's be real. But I still think he's an NHL caliber defenseman. He is someone who still brings value to that blue line. Now, do I agree that you probably got to shelter his minutes and really not have him in a lot of defensive situations? Sure, probably. But I think he's someone that still generates a fair amount of puck possession, or at least makes a creative play at times that certainly keeps defenses off balance at times. Yes, he shoots a lot of pucks into shin pads. Yes, he makes the very poor decision, a fair amount of the time, unfortunately. But I also think that he is someone who brings a lot more value than someone like maybe, let's say, last year, Dmitry Kulikov. Dmitry Kulikov at the tail end of the year was an absolute pylon. Matt Dumba defensively might be that too, but he'll at least give you some offensive spark, some mojo, something that you can definitely bank on. So going to be interesting. Contract here, not the greatest to start
starts for him, like you had mentioned. Not the greatest of starts for the Minnesota Wild, so we'll keep an eye on that. With that being said, we are going to head on over to our extra ice session. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Wild a little bit more, some reverse retro uniforms, and the board advertisements for the NHL. And welcome into the Extra Ice Session, episode number 134. Nick Maxton joining myself, Noah Grant, who, whatever person I'm referring myself, in, apparently that's a hot topic now.
As long as you're not Dahmer, I think we're fine.
Half the time I always say that I introduce myself as you, and that's a scary thought in and of itself, but right? That's, what can we say?
You don't want that titling, don't trust me.
Well, speaking of all of those things related, let's start before we get to the reverse retro jerseys, which I think is going to be probably the main part of this extra ice session. Let's talk about those board advertisements in the National Hockey League. There's some things that are working. I think there's some, for those who haven't seen it, by the way, they essentially are the moving graphics and the changing graphics that are superimposed on the TV broadcast. Obviously, it's only on the main actual view for the actual main camera of the broadcast view. But I think it kind of depends on the building that you're in. It depends on the advertisements, and they've gotten some things right. Like, let's not forget, like, the technology is pretty incredible at times. Like, they've gotten some things right. They've also gotten some things where they haven't gotten it so right. And, for me, I think some of the issues that we're seeing, one, obviously, especially at the Wild games, that lower set camera angle, you're seeing the stanchions and things get clipped. Same thing with the boards, with the doors opening. I don't know how they remedy that. Guys sometimes get like hands, gloves, skates, sticks lost on that far end when they get hit along the wall. And we're not saying it's going to be perfect. Really, I think where the biggest issue is actually, and where it's the most noticeable, there's too much motion.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, more static advertisements, just the rotating ads, I think would be perfect.
And this is where this thing is working, and it's also not working, right? And Nick, what the hell? What do you mean it's working? This is a new ad revenue stream for the NHL. Dare I say we missed one big part of NHL news is that the projection now has the salary cap could increase by $4 million next season. Again, the NHL has had to take a long look at their income streams, and the pandemic, as unfortunate it has been, kind of forced them to do that. They were basically a ticket revenue generated league. Yeah. So that was 60 to 65% of the revenue. Yeah. So this is where the helmet ads, now the jersey patches, and now you're seeing these, dynamic board ads, right? And I'm with you on that. I think if you were to kind of make them like the ring boards, and then just kind of change them through, it's not as distracting to the viewer. But unfortunately, I mean, let's look at the NFL broadcasts. Dare I say, every 10 seconds, there's some kind of moving graphic, some kind of ad that both Fox and CBS and even NBC are using in a very creative way. So,
but certainly the argument for a sport like that, football has a lot of stop and go. Same with baseball. Hockey just isn't the same way.
But the thing is that NHL is looking at those different ways to creatively generate revenue, and this is a way that they are looking to do it. Now, this may last and it may not last, right? This is the thing about, these newer sort of revenue streams, including dynamic board ads, is that, it's an idea. There's going to be feedback from both advertisers, ones who are actually paying the money for it, as well as the viewership. And you kind of wonder that, after one season, will they make adjustments to it? Right. Will they make it more static? Are the advertisers getting the value or the return on investment as they're looking for? So in that sense, I still think it's good that they're at least testing something out, right? I still feel like the NHL is trying to think outside the box, which how many times do we get to say that about the NHL? Not very often.
And I think there's portions of it that look really cool. I mean, the fact that, the boards kind of brighten up a little bit when you don't have the puck marks is super cool. But then obviously when you change camera angles, very noticeable, when you go to different cameras down below. The technology, I think, just simply put, is almost there, but it's not quite there yet.
Well, remember when the NFL, I mean, we look at it for granted now, but you'll watch an NFL game, it's been, 10, 15 years, just the first down line.
Yeah.
The technology to put a yellow line on the field and to have it underlaid over live motion.
Yeah.
I wish there was, and I know that you can probably look through this thing. I mean, YouTube's the Encyclopedia Britannica of yesteryear.
Yeah.
The technology And the setup to make just that line happen on NFL Sundays is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And also, the other piece too, how that has even changed from, like you mentioned, a graphic just simply getting a line underneath or actually on the screen at all. Now you've got, these moving arrows, these motion graphics that do show those first down, potential to get into field goal range, all of these things that show up. We've seen it as well, even in the NHL side, being able to point out who are the guys on the ice when they're actively moving and shifting. So there are a lot of really cool things coming from the NHL. Not everything is going to stick. We recognize that. Broadcasting TV is not a perfect world. Just think about it. Nick and I are in it, so it can't be, right?
Remember, I think the worst in the NHL. Remember the puck on fire?
Yeah,
the heated puck back in the 90s.
Yeah, where you essentially got to see where the shot was going, and not that was like utterly terrible, because if you're a fan who has a tough time tracking the puck, it certainly would have helped you. But there were, there are too many flaws that just didn't make sense within the game. But think about that technology back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
That was groundbreaking. At the time,
incredible.
Yes.
I think it was 1998 was when they first rolled that out. So think about that.
Right. Yep.
Noah Grant was too. With that being said, how do you feel about that one?
I feel nothing.
What's new?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, some people felt nothing. Some people felt very animated about our next topic here, and our final topic of the show, the reverse retro jerseys. Nick has them up on our computer here. So really, there were jerseys that I thought, were exceptional, but there were a lot more this time that really struggled. I'm gonna say this, Nick. There is one jersey that is better than all of the rest of them.
You talking about the wild ones?
No.
Oh,
no
way.
The best jersey in this group, hands down, without a doubt, the LA Kings. The LA Kings one is just head and shoulders above the rest. Those whites look good. The old retro crown that they have, the purple and gold, it looks fantastic. I think that they are definitely the best. Well, let's kind of go through. We have the picture here, so we have them in no particular order. We'll get to the wild one last. How does that sound?
Sure.
Let's kind of roll through here. Let's start about the big hot topic one, because it's in the top left here, the Florida.
I don't mind it.
I don't mind it either. I don't get the undying, like, oh my God, this is incredible type thing. It reminds me of a beer league jersey.
Because it is.
And it's a cool take, using that secondary logo with the sun, the palm tree, the hockey stick. It's a lot of cool things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people have put it like top 5, top 10.
I wouldn't go that far.
I think points for creativity. I think it's maybe like in that 8 to 15 range. I mean, it's
Sure. decent,
and it's a creative look comparatively to the rest of them that we've seen. But I don't understand the, like a lot of media outlets have them like top 3, man.
There's a bigger issue at play here with the reverse retros, because you talk about revenue streams. These are money grabs. Let's be real. Now, instead of, and here's an idea that I will pitch, which, because remember, Adidas did not renew their equipment deal for jersey sponsorship after this season. And now with ESPN in the fold, gosh, I hope it's Nike or maybe Under Armour that takes, kill off the reverse retros. Like, just kill them. Because I don't think this is a sustainable thing. I think that you're going to see this is the last time you're going to see
it. And
it.
I don't think the intention was to go more than once. And then I think they were like, well, let's do it one more time to see if we can give teams one more chance and try to get a little bit of revenue back for an NHL, program that was really struggling because of the pandemic. So.
Yes. But I like the idea, because in the unaffiliated, the Color Rush jersey, which those are cool.
Yeah.
The NBA, they've got plenty of jerseys to choose from, right? And so, and in baseball, also a couple of, I would say let the teams design a couple alternates.
Yeah. So you're saying that the actual concept of the reverse retro, and let's not forget what that is that it's to make something so reversed or so kind of like on brand yet off brand that it has this weird unique twist. You're saying
it's supposed to be a throwback.
Yeah, you're saying just let the teams
design their own
with their color palette. Well, the reverse retros aren't necessarily supposed to be throwbacks. They're supposed to be, especially the original one was supposed to be a flip flop of what colors and designs were going to be. So it was supposed to be this drastic thing. And now I think other teams, the Minnesota Wild included, are recognizing what works for their fan base.
Right. And I think, maybe this is the foundation to lay the groundwork for that.
Yeah.
Because again, there's so much you can do with what the retro looks. I think they were a cool idea. But again, trying to make a cohesive league wide. As we see with this rendition, the reverse retro, there's some that nail it. Some were just like, ugh. what do
Yeah.
you do? What is
Well-
this, right?
Well, let's talk about some of the Detroit and Chicago, both terrible.
I mean, dare I say lazy design?
Yeah, it's just
I mean,
it's bad.
Bad.
Actually, I really like Montreal's one in the top left there. The Blues actually
Yep.
look pretty good, and
Blues
for
look good.
Montreal to kind of go out on a limb a little bit and incorporate a lot of blue into their jersey, something you don't see a whole lot from a very
Nope.
traditional program. I think they did a really good job with that one. For
I
me,
do
that's
like that one.
definitely top 5 or top 10 for me.
I love the Pittsburgh, the old Penguin logo.
Yeah.
Front and center.
Yeah,
that one looks nice.
I'm gonna go across each row, I think, because I don't know how else to do this. The Calgary Flames one has been getting a lot of hate. If you look back, they actually used to have a jersey like this.
They did.
I like it. I got to be honest with you. I like it. And I know a lot of people are like, what the heck is this design? But you think back, they literally had that design. So it is a literal throwback.
It's
So
a
that's
throwback, yeah.
why I like it. Is it a pretty jersey? Heck no.
No.
But to me, I like that historical, kind of going out there a little bit. And like we've talked about, is that as everybody, it must be a lot of Flames fans behind us here, but as everybody can see, the Flames have probably the best home and away uniforms in the league.
Oh, for sure.
Hands down. Their
Hands
alternates are pretty good. So for them to kind of go out on a limb and have one that's, maybe a little bit uncharacteristic, I like it. I like the move. I think it's getting a little bit too much hate in that regard.
And here's the thing, right, Noah? Because when you look at, again, the reason for doing this, right, and that is to generate revenue. The one thing I will tell you is that if the fans don't like it, they're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
So it kind of
True.
defeats the purpose. That's just me. So we'll just do a couple more because I think it's tough to describe these to an audience that isn't seeing them.
Yeah. I would say if you're listening and you have a chance, definitely pull it up on the NHL website. We're looking at a graphic here.
It's got all of them in one kind of picture, and maybe we can post a link to to have folks take a look at it.
If you stick in Canada, Edmonton's is awful.
That's the old oil pellet or whatever the heck that is.
Yeah, the old spaceship.
Yeah.
The Jets one is not.
I don't mind.
It's not terrible, but again, it kind of is very close to what they did with the Baby Blues. So, Toronto's. I don't mind Toronto's. It's just very meh.
It's true. I mean, it's tweaking a few things here and there. It's not much different.
Like how do you not go with any Toronto St. Pat's inspired stuff?
I know. Well, I think because they already do that every year. How about the Sharks doing a throwback to the California Seals?
Yeah,
that's a bold move.
I don't mind it. I thought it was funny because
they go back to the white skates. That's the big question.
I thought it was funny because people were like, "Oh, they look like football jerseys." Well, no shit, Sherlock. That's what the original ones look like. Oh my gosh, it just says Sharks instead of Seals. I like it. I mean, I think it's cool. The Sharks have kind of nailed the jersey thing in recent memory, though, which is something that you definitely don't.
Teals look good.
That you definitely don't say. How about one that was kind of well, let's finish up with California, and then I'm going to circle over across the country. The Ducks one.
I don't mind the Ducks.
I don't mind that. They use that Mighty Ducks of Anaheim logo too much, though, now.
Yeah, because it's so
iconic,
reminiscent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it works.
Yeah.
And I think the one problem they'll run into as we get into more alternate jerseys in later years is, have they burned it out?
Yeah.
And I think maybe they already have, because again, it's that old design, sort of that diagonal lines when just the orange instead of that, teal or sort of that blue that was the original, or no, the dark purple. But it still looks good. It's still an iconic jersey. You're still going to have people that will rush to the stores and grab it. So I don't mind it.
Well, let's talk about iconic. People don't realize this. The Tampa Bay Lightning used to actually have this jersey as a throwback. This is another throwback. A lot of people didn't like it. Again, like I said, it's an ugly ass jersey.
Yes, it is.
It is. But really, it has that, memento, that throwback style thing. I don't know. I think it's kind of cheesy and cool in its own way. Much better than the last one that they did, I think.
Yeah. And at the end of it, again, I remember them wearing that jersey. And it's weird. The one thing that's different is that waves on the bottom there. That wasn't part of it, but again, designers, they do their thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's an ugly jersey, but like I think it points for creativity and going outside of the box. I mean, there's something to be said for that. Some of these teams, I mean, like Detroit and Chicago, I guess they quote unquote played it safe. Detroit doesn't have a lot to work with. We get that, but like, man. Buffalo's is all right. The color scheme, not in red and black, is kind of a weird thing. They have the old Sabres logo, essentially in the new colors.
Yep.
But it's not terrible.
Not terrible.
Yeah. The Bruins one has been getting a lot of hate too, with the teddy bear essentially on the front. I think it looks cool.
Again, for Boston, I mean, there's not much with an original 6 that you can do with what they have. So And that was an alternate jersey for a while for them too.
Yeah,
with the yellows.
Yeah, it used to be a yellow, and
as far as the main color scheme there. So, I mean, it's all right.
yeah, it's okay. Of course, for those wondering, it's essentially like sawtooth bear slash pattern that they used to have the old yellow alternates back. Actually, when Phil Kessel would have been drafted,
Actually, yes.
for the Bruins, it's just flipped over. It's now a white jersey. It doesn't look bad, I don't think. The Predators going with essentially their old retro
logo. Yep.
Yeah, and the old third jersey is the weird off-color yellow thing.
Yep.
I mean, points for creativity a little bit, but the original ones were ugly as heck, and these ones are not much better.
No.
I don't think the Preds really have a whole lot to work with as far as the yellow part of the color scheme. The fact that they actually made yellow home jerseys work for as long as they have impresses me still.
Yeah, because I mean they were with the Blues for a while, blue and silver.
Well, speaking of Blues, let's talk about the Blues. Also a yellow jersey for them. The logo on the crest is cool. It's a yellow jersey with
Actually, I don't mind the Blues.
White and blue. I mean, they kind of went out there with that. It's essentially what their baby blues were with the two banding stripe, but they flipped the colors a little bit. The logo, like I said, on the front is really cool, but I just don't know that it sticks for St. Louis hockey.
Again, reverse retros.
Next one here, I actually really like the Arizona Coyotes one. I know a lot of people have been giving them flack for the tan one. It's essentially the Kachina jerseys, the old purple ones, but it's tan. I don't think they look terrible, but also brown has never looked good on a hockey jersey in any capacity. So, yeah, not a fan.
I'm not a huge fan of that one.
A lot of people have ranked the Dallas Stars one pretty high. I don't know that I would. It's black with green shoulders. It looks like a youth jersey.
Arms. Yeah,
much. The old Stars logo is cool, though. I like that. The Canucks one, fantastic. The old skating lumberjack logo, good color scheme, good banding on the arms. This is probably a top 3 or top 5 for me 100%. For sure. That's a good one. Seattle's is probably a miss for me. Not really much to work with.
I was going to say, I'm not sure what else you could do with that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the old Metropolitans logo, but just didn't really stick.
I think, I don't mind the striping and the color scheme, but, maybe if you, instead of doing the logo, maybe just wrote Seattle or something like on it, and maybe some cursive writing that may have looked all right.
Yeah.
Maybe it looked more vintage per se, but again, it wasn't, what could they have done?
Yeah,
honestly?
Not really sure. What about the Space Needle, man? I have no idea.
That would have looked awkward.
Carolina Hurricanes, about as generic as you get. Very much.
Back to like 05-06 home jersey. Just about.
A lot of people we just finished up the second row here, so we got probably about 9 or 10 teams left to go here. Colorado, a lot of people have liked this one. I think it's out there a little bit, kind of a flip flop. The secondary C logo for them, and then the shoulders essentially dark in there, and the old I'm trying to remember who was it, the Rockies maybe it was Rockies, that used to play, but kind of cool. People have this ranked pretty high on theirs. I don't think it's amazing. I don't know if it's a top 3.
Was legit though. Quebec Nordiques logo. That one was much better.
Yeah, I think hard to top that one.
Yeah.
We'll get with that with the Wild too, but I think this is maybe like 5 to 10 is where I would rank it. It's a decent jersey, but it's not like, oh my God, crazy that, Washington Capitals, love it.
Yep.
Love the old Screaming Eagle and the fantastic jersey. New York Rangers also going with the retro. Love
that Statue of Liberty.
Yeah,
looks great.
The old reminiscing Marek Malik going between the legs and Olaf Kolzig. You want to talk about a matchup there. Both of those work well, but I mean they kind of played to their history. No surprise there. The Blue Jackets one is a definite miss.
That's horrible.
Yeah, flipping the black and the blues for the shoulders here again.
That's quite literally it.
Yeah,
that's quite literally.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah.
The Sens one. Miss besides the logo on the front. They tried to go back to the old alternate back in 2007 with a little bit of
pizzazz.
Yeah, but like less at the same time. I don't know what they were trying to do there. Vegas's one is getting.
I don't mind that one.
Yeah, I don't mind that one either. It's getting a tough time. Of course, everyone was like, "What's with the lettering and the numbers?" Well, it's actually a play on the old Excalibur hotel that used to be there. So, I think it's cool.
I don't. He's better than their last one.
Yeah, I don't want to say that anything that Vegas does is cool besides Phil Kessel right now, but yeah, these aren't terrible. I mean, I would rank them probably like
they're my top 10.
12, like 12, 13, something like that. I mean, they weren't terrible. Like you mentioned, Penguins jerseys, fantastic. The old retro logo, those were great. Philadelphia Flyers, meh. I mean, it's not terrible. They just aren't really.
The arm banding is definitely weird because it's I don't even know how you describe that.
Do you think Chuck Fletcher had a hand in this one?
No.
2 more teams before the Minnesota Wild here.
He can't sign it to an 8-year extension, so no.
Yeah, the New Jersey Devils also going with, I believe it still is the Colorado Rockies or Kansas City
Warriors?
Yeah, what were they? They're Mavericks? I don't remember what the heck they were.
Maybe it was the Mavericks. Yeah,
Chiefs? I have no idea.
The color scheme, yeah.
Anyway, it might be the Rockies, though, I think. But nonetheless, everyone was giving this one a hard time, too, because I know the last one they went with the old, obviously, Christmas color ones.
Color palette,
I think these ones are cool, too.
And again,
I like these ones.
And again, this is where when you're trying to essentially create a sort of a theme type jersey, you're going to get this disparity. And again, I don't mind it. But again, I think, this more proves in our conversation, this will be the end of the reverse retros.
Yeah, last team on the bottom right here.
The Fishermen.
Yeah, the Islanders logo. It's a great logo. I think the jersey was a miss, man. It just doesn't have the same...
It's not the same pop.
Yeah, it just doesn't. You're missing the entire coloring on the bottom that the original one had in the waves and stuff. And I get what they were trying to do, but I just don't think it.
The arena agrees too. Definite miss.
Yeah. So apparently, last team, reverse retros of Minnesota Wild, going with essentially a green version of the
old North Star palette. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So shoulders obviously looking a little more modern, so to speak. They use the old NHL logo crest on the collar, the old vintage NHL seal, so to speak, back from 1978. Somebody said they look like the Subway jersey wrappings, and they couldn't get it out of their head. I was like, that's kind of funny. They're not terrible. With the banding, which would have been slightly different back in the 70s, but pretty darn similar. Of course, the current Wild crest. Everyone's going, oh, the Minnesota Wild, they went with the same design, just reversed it. Oh, they're not as good as the whites. Here's the thing. Number one, yes and yes.
Yeah.
The whites were pretty hard to top that.
Yeah.
But number two, as soon as the whites came out, you know what everybody in Minnesota said? God, I wish we had a green one of these.
Yep.
Well,
you got your wish.
There you go, man. I mean, the Wild could literally make this their home and away if they could get the licensing rights. And I would be all for it, honestly.
Right. And I guess to top off the jerseys that I want in a sense, right? And that is, some good, a lot of meh, some bad.
A lot of bad.
Yeah. So, this will be, again, I hope that I like new jerseys. I like the fact that you can take a play on it.
You like New Jersey's jerseys, or you like new jerseys in the NHL?
Thank you for correcting me. I like new sweaters. How about that? New threads.
New unis.
Yeah. Is there another way we can do this? I don't know. Fans like him too.
Yeah.
So must have been a goal there for the North Dakota US-16s, you said, right?
Yeah, it has to be North Dakota. Not like Minnesota would score, right?
Yeah,
Come
right.
on.
No.
North Dakota won in a shootout on Friday. That's all I care about.
Anyway. But you kind of hope that this sets the table for the and I kind of wish that each team could have up to 4 or 5 different jerseys they can have in rotation.
Yeah.
And another thing that this, and my final, megaphone moment for the night is, I kind of wish that the NHL and their jersey pickings would do what the NBA does, have the home team pick a jersey.
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 weeks in advance or whatever or not. I know sometimes with the jerseys are a limited run, at least that's how they're doing it now, that they're doing it kind of theme nights.
Yeah.
Screw that. Have the home team pick a jersey and then go into your bag of your unis, picking, the opposite color, dark or light.
Yeah.
So that way it's not always dark for the home team. I think, again, the whites at home are really good for the Minnesota Wild.
And some teams have done that occasionally. Here's the thing. I actually don't know that there's a limit on how many jerseys you can carry besides the fact that you have to play a certain number of games in each jersey. I think it's
That's
8 or 12. So, I mean, that obviously narrows down the number that you can obviously have. But Nick, I want to know this. Who are your top 3? We talked about
top 3.
Yeah. Can we also maybe do top 3 worst?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So top 3 for me as far as the best, Vancouver, Pittsburgh. Third one, geez. I'm going to have to go Vegas, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I actually do like the Vegas jersey quite a bit.
Interesting.
Top 3 worst for me, Edmonton.
Yeah, it's a bad one.
That's a bad one. I'm trying to look around here. I'm not a fan of the Seals jersey, the Sharks
Really?
jersey. I'm not a huge fan.
I mean, I don't hate it just because I get it, but
yeah.
I mean, it's not a great jersey, but it wasn't a great jersey then.
Then Arizona. Not a fan of Arizona.
Really? Okay.
No.
Well, I'm going to start with my 3 worst. Detroit and Chicago. Jeez Louise. Brutal. St. Louis Blues one for me is not great. I got to be honest. If it wasn't that one, I would probably throw Edmonton or Carolina in there just because of how meh it is.
Yeah.
As Seattle's is a tough one too. As far as the 3 best, LA Kings, has to be the top spot for me.
It's in my top 5.
Yeah, certainly. Like you had also mentioned, the Vancouver one is a really tough one to pass up. I certainly like it. Some of these other teams, like I like, Washington, for example, but it's hard to put them in the top 3 because it's pretty much a mimicking.
Right.
My third best one, I'm going to say the Minnesota Wild. I really am. I think it is that,
homer.
but I do think it is that good. It's still a fantastic
nice
jersey.
one,
And I think a lot of people are turned off by the fact that, they flipped their jersgy. Dude, who
did what it said, reverse retro.
Yeah.
They reversed the reverse retro.
Yeah.
Come on. What do you want?
Who doesn't want more North Star stuff?
Apparently,
you know what I
doesn't.
mean?
Hockey
Like there's nobody that I've met besides Minnesota fans who are upset about the actual Dallas Stars now being the North Stars. There's nobody I met in the country who have been like, oh, the North Stars palette, that sucked. Well, I would never wear North Star stuff. Like, no, it was an iconic logo, it was a great color scheme, Subway or no Subway. And
it's still, you talk about a vintage brand that still sells a lot of merchandise. The North Star still sells a ton of mercandise.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Well, I was sold on this episode. It was a pleasure to have you here in the Magic City, Nick.
Thank you. Yes.
Obviously, would you thank me? I mean, I'm not that important, but please. But with that being said, of course, we are in the rink that you got to call some games. You got to kind of mention it on the broadcast too. But what a great experience. You did buy me dinner actually twice, I believe, maybe even 3 times. I think it was twice. I think it was twice. So take that, Caleb. But with that being no joke, he actually bought me dinner on the first time that we were here. So with that being said, though, I mean, your time in the Magic City is about at an end. We got to do a live show for the first time since Sid Wolf back in. Do you know what the episode number is? I actually had to look it up.
I have no idea.
Would you like to take a guess?
65.
You're actually really close. 69.
Oh, shit.
With that, so second time that we've really done a live show since basically like episode 4 or 5.
Right.
So, I mean, how was the experience? Obviously, for those who can't see the rest of the rink, 2,550 is the capacity for this building, Pepsi Rink at Mesa Arena. I mean, overall experience, how was it?
Really cool, honestly. Really enjoyed it. Really felt welcomed by the organization, yourself included.
Kinda.
Yeah, right. But anytime you get to call a hockey game is fun. Right? Yeah. And the on ice play was great. Between Aberdeen,
good hockey,
and Minot.
Some fights too for those who want to check out last week's episode.
Yeah, there was some scrums. There were some scrums in the second period. There, definitely emotions got the better of the two teams.
Someone got cross-checked in the face, so that's kind of what started the fight. In case anyone was curious.
Yeah. But you know what you're supposed to do in that situation? You're supposed to walk away.
Yeah, actually, you're supposed to shake the other team's hand and buy him a sandwich.
Yeah, like I bought you dinner twice.
Yeah, like Caleb.
Supposed to give him a beer. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
right?
So if Caleb hits you in the face, buy him his food. So Caleb, there you go. If you want your food, you got to hit Nick in the face.
Yes. But all joking aside, was a
fantastic. I wasn't kidding.
Oh, you weren't. Okay. Stop horsing around. So, that's an inside joke for those wondering. But no, it was a fantastic weekend. Really enjoyed my time. Couldn't have asked for anything better. Hopefully we'll be back on the mic soon. Again, hopefully this weekend again with the back half of that second game for the women's, and then they continue to get some more opportunities from there. So thanks very much.
Dude, absolutely awesome. It was a ton of fun here. For Nick Maxon, I'm Noah Grant. You can find us at Warming House and on Twitter, HuskiesWarmingHousePodcast.com, or wherever you find your podcast. We're going to sign off here from Minot, North Dakota, and we will see you soon in the den.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it. He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.